The guy that I learned all this stuff from, he said that you practice Tai Chi to free your body, and then when you free your body, then you can free your mind, and then when your mind is free, your spirit is able to be open and receive and communicate fully. And one of the things Plato does in his writings is he establishes pretty clearly this idea of like the world of forms and then the world of matter. And then like matter is trying to express what's happening in the abstract world of forms, but it can never fully do it accurately. Like there is this idea amongst a lot of Tai Chi people that they have this like that they're like superheroes, which is wrong, right? If you're thinking about beating people up, like if you want to learn how to hurt somebody, MMA is absolutely the way to go. But if you want to learn how to fix yourself and then fix other people, then Tai Chi is the way to go.
Greetings, humans. Welcome to another episode of Humans of the Multiverse. I'd like to share the stories of our friends from all across the multiverse. And today we're sitting here, we're honored to be sitting here with my acupuncturist, my personal acupuncturist, and my friend, Mr. Cotter, Kelsey. He's would you say like Tai Chi, like what? Practitioner? Or?
Tai Chi nerd is the technical term.
Okay.
Enthusiast, obsessive.
Enthusiast. Okay.
Yeah, that would probably be like practitioner, works, but that's not really an honest answer.
The honest answer is you nerd out on Tai Chi.
Oh goodness, yes. Like nerdy and geeking are totally different things, right?
Yeah, explain the difference.
So the way I understand it, like to geek out over something is to obsess over something and have it occupy all of your thoughts and be very, very difficult to extricate yourself from that frame of reference.
Right.
So that's the type of a person who's going to be unable to take themselves out of their Star Wars fandom when they're interacting with other people who don't care about it, right? For example, right? Whereas a nerd is wrapped up with what you could like a pseudo academic thing.
Yes.
Like it's you're very hungry for information. And so you want to absorb and learn as much about it as you can. And being a nerd for a certain topic isn't as not going to lock you into that topic the way being a geek would. A nerd is just what you are. And then your interests are what you nerd out about. So it's like a nerd is going to be, a nerd for anything they care about. They're going to go like all in on to the exclusion of other things. Whereas like a geek, it's almost more of like, there's like a lack. Thing? It's an identity thing, but there's a lack of control. It's like you either fall into something and it's like you can't control your impulses, or you don't have the wherewithal to understand what's happening, or it's just more of like an obsession. So I would say like geeking is something where it's like, anyone is going to have a geek out moment, right? It's like, hey, it's just, you get tickled and you laugh. You can't help it. But if you are a geek, it's like you're stuck in that sort of manic state. Whereas like a nerd is just how you are. And you hope that any specialist you're going to be interacting with is going to be a nerd. And has found that aspect of their specialty.
So let me give you an example that pops into my head just because I coach basketball. If you're a 3-point shooting specialist, that means, and that's really your job on the court is really just catch the ball behind the 3-point line and shoot it and make it, because you just nerded out on that motion and how to do that perfectly every single time. You got really good at it. That's nerding out.
Well, see, now you're talking about something which is like a physical pursuit, right? So, and if you are just like, I remember there was this let me answer your question with a story. I was
Yes.
watching this documentary on breakdancing, and it was about how breakdancing gone international. And like that, I think there were two teams who were both Korean, and they were facing each other in the worlds. And there were each team had somebody whose specialty was doing the head spin. So they would get their body completely straight.
so
They'd be like wearing
ridiculous.
a helmet, and all they would do is spin around like this. It's all they could do, right? And so I would be reluctant to call that a nerd, because like a nerd to me implies like an academic aspect of it.
Okay.
Whereas like a gross motor movement is going to be moved kind of far away from an academic pursuit. Whereas Tai Chi, because it's going so slowly and it's all very rarefied, fine motor movements, like you're actively thinking about every single little thing that you're doing. And Tai Chi technically is the Chinese word for the yin yang symbol. So I don't speak Mandarin, but the way you say the Tai Chi, the yin yang symbol in Chinese is called Tai Chi 2. And 2 means map. So Tai Chi means grand ultimate. And then the way we say Chi, that comes from the way you take Chinese words and write them with Latin letters, with the Roman alphabet. And so the CH is like a J sound, but anyone who's not a linguist wouldn't know that, right? So in like the 50s and 60s, the Chinese actually developed a system where they would use Latin letters in the way that's much more, the way you'd think. So that's called pinyin. The old one's called Wei Giles. So the pinyin version is spelled Taiji, and that's so Taiji and then 2. So grand ultimate map, right? So the yin and the yang are the grand ultimate map of the universe. So right there, that's your Taoist philosophy. That's your Taoist medicine, like acupuncture. That's your Bagua theory, which is where feng shui and the I Ching, the divination stuff. So like right there, like Tai Chi is just and Tai Chi 2, right? So what I do, Tai Chi, that comes from Tai Chi Chuan. Chuan means fist. And anytime you want to designate a style of Kung Fu, you say fist. So it can be like, the Great Mountain Fist, and that's the Great Mountain style of Kung Fu, or, whatever, Hungar Chuan, right? They wouldn't call it that. But so Tai Chi 2 is the grand ultimate fist. And it doesn't mean it's better than everything. It just means it's based off of the yin yang principles. And the yin yang principles are the way you describe everything. So by practicing Tai Chi, you're actually engaged in a philosophical pursuit. So I would think Tai Chi, and I'm just arbitrarily arbitrating here, right?
Sure.
I'm not, but I would argue that one could be a nerd for Tai Chi, even though it's physical, because it is the practice of yin yang philosophy. So if you wanted to have like a Socratic, right? If you had like a Socratic exercise routine where you did it kind of slowly and thoughtfully, you could say that you could nerd out over that. Whereas like the way I understand, spinning on the head exclusively or just shooting just free throws, that's like a specialist, right? It wouldn't be like a nerd. Okay. Now, somebody who could tell you about all of the free throw shooters that have ever played basketball, that would be a nerd, right?
Got it.
Because they would have an academic element to that. So
yeah, I was also thinking about coaching, because like there is a lot of film study and reading and all that kind of stuff, and I've been nerding out on that for like a few weeks now. So okay, now that we've got that settled, Tai Chi nerd, Qigong what, nerd too?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think of them as the same thing.
Okay.
Not everybody would, but I do.
Okay. Would you do me a favor, and then for me, and then for the audience, elevator speech, what is Tai Chi? Elevator speech, what is Qigong, and why do you think of them as the same thing?
Okay, so I'm going to reverse the order because it'll make sense.
Okay.
So Qigong literally translates to Qi, laborious work. So Gong is like labor, hard work. And then Qi is Qi, which that's a whole nother thing. It's not life energy, it's information, where instead of binary code of ones and zeros, you have yins and yangs. But that aside, so Qigong is using, you move very, very slowly, and your movements are very simple compared to Tai Chi, which is like this big elaborate choreography, whereas like Qigong could just be moving one hand forward and one hand back at the same time and then just switching. Thing about Qigong is that whenever you like raise your arm, every single muscle in your body is participating. So if I'm going to lift my right arm, I'm using everything, including my left toes, right? And then I also try to incorporate that with my breath. And Qigong, I forget exactly, but it might be recorded back about 6,000 years ago. The kind that I really have been focused on for the last decade or so, that was done probably about 2,000 years ago, the 5 animal sports. Whereas Tai Chi is much more recent. It's less than 1,000 years old. But the way I think of Tai Chi is you can take various Qigong movements and then combine them together into a much more elaborate choreography. Because in Tai Chi, you might move off to the right, but you're not going to go off to the left. Whereas in Qigong, you would. So Qigong, you're going to get a balance for your body with everything you do with the right side, you're going to do with the left side. Whereas Tai Chi may not do that. Tai Chi is going to have, it's going to look like, and you can take a kata, right? Like a karate form or a kung fu form or Korean art form and just slow it down. And that would look a lot like Tai Chi. But yeah, I've already gone way past. The elevator got stalled. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Department's on the way.
No, but these aren't things that can be fully explained in elevator speeches anyway. So I think you did like a very good job. And it's the reason why I wanted to do this because I wanted to kind of share some of my personal journey and for the audience. And before we get into kind of like what you and I have been doing a little bit, but my experience. So let me back up. As you know about me, Cotter, but I don't know if the audience does, is that like I'm a very like athletic, physical person. I grew up playing sports. I grew up, running, playing team sports, that kind of thing. Very active person, broke a lot of bones growing up, climbed a lot of trees, that kind of thing. And then I was in the military for 8 years, which I then took that same attitude and applied that to the military. Then I came back from, some combat experiences and I was struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder. And so I got really into fitness and eating healthy and that kind of thing as a way to treat my PTSD. However, because like I do everything to the extreme, like if it wasn't a drug, it was going to be sports and athletics and exercise. I did exercise to the extreme after having, and I'm just going to see if I can remember them all. Okay, wait, hold on. Broke this knuckle getting into a fight. Broke this pinky finger getting into a fight. Broke this knuckle punching my brother in the head. Broke both hands at the same time playing football, where I caught a kickoff, a kick return, and I almost returned it for a touchdown, and some super fast guy caught me out of nowhere and just flung me, and I landed on the back of my hands. Broke both my wrists at the same time. So I actually played, So I actually played basketball and volleyball. Like I would walk with casts on my wrists and I'd be dribbling with my fingers. Okay. That's how insane I am. And then I broke this hand again playing basketball a month before I was going to Iraq to combat in 2005. And I just didn't say anything. And I did go have an X-ray, and they didn't see anything on the X-ray. But I had what's called a broken navicular bone, and or scaphoid. But anyway, either way, I went to Iraq for a whole combat tour with a broken hand. Okay. And then since then, and this is about you, Cotter, so I'm gonna slow this down. I'm gonna condense this a little bit. Since then, I've had 2 surgeries on this pinky finger, a surgery on my hip. I got kicked in the head and had my left retina detached. Had surgery there. I had my rotator cuff and my labrum fully ripped off right before I went to Afghanistan, and had to have surgery on that. So my there's more like I could keep going, but those are just the major ones, and I might have missed 1 or 2. So the point is I switched from PT, like, okay, I'm treating now. This is my coping skill. So now I'm going to overuse it. And then I just developed all these really, what I'm learning to see is like very autonomic patterns of movement, patterns of sitting, patterns of walking, patterns of standing. They're compensating for all these injuries that I've had and all these surgeries. So and I am the opposite of Cotter. That's one thing we learned about each other as far as our perceptions. Like I'm very like reactive, and Cotter's very like the opposite of that. So what he noticed about me was that like like I can't pay attention to I'm like a baby first learning how to like pay attention to my body. I've been going my entire life. Basically, my head has been over here and my body's been over there somewhere, and they're not connected. And so I've messed around with acupuncture before with bad experiences, and I basically wrote it off. Then the VA told me they do these like it's called the community care program, and my doctor was like, "Oh, we can give you 12 free acupunctures." And I was like, "You mean I don't have to go anywhere? I don't have to drive far because Cotter's really close to me?" And so they're like, "No, you don't. And it's free." So I said, "Well, let me just give this a try." And we hit it off right away. And so that's why I asked him to join the multiverse. But he's really actually helped me a lot, and I feel like I'm at the very beginning of a journey of learning about my inner self. And I'm really excited about it. So I just wanted to thank you, Cotter, for that, because I mean, what is it? I wanted to ask you, what is it like working with somebody like me who just like it's like hasn't learned to slow down at all ever? Like you must come across people like me a lot.
I parse people into two categories. They're either grasshoppers or ants. And if you remember that little fable about the grasshopper and the ant, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so most people who come to see me are ants because grasshoppers won't get off the ass to go do anything. And even if they would, oftentimes they can't afford it because they've just been, just sitting there. So most of the people that I come across are ants. I was born a grasshopper, and I had to learn some anti-behaviors because I love doing this, and I can't do this just sitting on my ass. I have to actually get out there and have an office and blah blah blah, and I got to pay the bills and all that other crap. So, yeah, exactly. So I am typically only working with people who are
like me.
Yeah. So and so what I learned over the years is that it's just like because I am so relaxed, it's very easy for me to be lazy. That I'm basically like a professional relaxer. I'm so good at relaxing. I help other people relax.
Yes.
And then just having like the acupuncture needles and then the Qigong and all that other garbage, like that is like a wonderful tool to help other people learn to be a little bit lazy. And one of the things about being lazy, well, it's like there's the derogatory way to look at it, right?
No, I'm not. I know what you meant.
Yeah. But like but I'm using a derogatory word, especially in our culture. But like if you're there's a guy named Chuang-Tzu who's another one of the Taoist philosophers like Lao Tzu, and he has a book. He's called the Chuang-Tzu, but he's got a chapter in there called "Free and Easy Wandering," or the Free and Easy Wanderer. And the idea is that like if you're lazy or free and easy, you're paying attention to what's happening, because if something comes along that's going to accomplish an objective for you, you're going to want to use as much of that to do it for you without you have to exert very much effort, right? So that's how you don't starve to death. And then so what I found that I can do is I can just help people who are thinking too much, just like pay attention to what's actually happening around them, what's actually happening within their bodies. And then that's where they begin to become more sensitive to things, and they learn to listen to themselves, and their entire lives are like, oh, if I'm going to be successful, I have to just go. I've got to dictate. When it's important to be able to be active, but it's really nice to just mostly be paying attention and only being active when it's appropriate. So
and when you say like helping people be lazy once in a while, what you're really saying is like helping people take control of their autonomic nervous system and switch from fight or flight to rest and digest. And which some people don't know, just don't know how to do. And they never learned how. It didn't come naturally to them. There's a lot of things like trauma and stuff like that. Is trauma typical in people that you see in ants?
Yeah, well, trauma's typical for everybody, right?
Yes.
And then, and you know, like I think of it on a spectrum. Like there's things which are, you know, truly horrific, which you wouldn't wish upon your worst enemy, and then there's things that are like, you know, that were really bad, and maybe somebody else it wouldn't be traumatizing for them, but the way you're built, it is for you. And then, but the other thing is, it's really interesting, is that if you think about humans, we just have to survive long enough. Males just have to survive long enough to reach procreation age, and then just impregnate one female. That is it, right? We're not designed for longevity. Females have to stay alive to make sure that next generation gets to procreation age, right? That's just the way our genes have played out. And so what tends to happen is that there's a genetic reward over the millennia to being in the fight or flight mode, because that makes you more able to deal with things that, you know, are threats, right? If everyone's just sitting around the fig tree not paying attention and some angry group of chimps come in, like, you're going to get eaten.
You're screwed, right?
Yeah, exactly. So having the default reaction to life be fight or flight actually makes genetic sense when you have to work your way through hunter-gatherer. But now, and I'm not the first person to say this, of course, but like now we're in a world where, you know, where any type of a thing that happens that's not a direct positive is going to trigger your fight or flight, right? It's going to get you into that, you know, the sympathetic, to use the big sciencey term. And then our body doesn't know the difference between a dead lion and a saber-toothed tiger. It doesn't recognize that, right? So because we are so much safer and we don't have to be reacting to actual threats, but in order to live in that world, we have to do all of these things. And if, all these things aren't done, that's bad, right? That we're just put into our fight or flight all the time. Then you add trauma to it. And what trauma does is, you know, for some people, it just, it reorients their understanding of the world. And if you think about,
and themselves,
right. If you think about concepts as being these gravitational masses, right? And what happens is you have a traumatic experience, and it's all of a sudden this idea there's a huge amount of gravity in your mental universe. So every thought you have is going to get pulled into that influence, right? So when someone has like a significant trauma, it's very, very difficult not to have that affect the way they interface with everything. So to answer your question, like, most people are stuck in the fight or flight because that's just the way we're genetically, you know, designed to be. That's how we've evolved. So we could, you know, just get the next generation going. And then trauma is definitely going to, you know, perpetuate that.
And so Tai Chi and Qigong, doing things slow and paying attention to your body. Like, this is just my understanding. You know, please expand. But like, and this is what's been doing for me is like here's a great example. Like, I wanted to call you like 3 days ago because I was so excited. But that spot in my upper right back, it moves now. Like, I can move it. And then it's directly related to the tightness in my lower left back. So when I was able to move my upper right shoulder, my lower left back moved, and then my pelvis aligned, and I was like, whoa. And so then I spent all day just like moving my shoulders around like a weirdo. And my wife's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, but I was missing like a whole, like, just due to all the shit I just said earlier. It's probably, as well as emotional traumas and stuff like that. I just lost a range of, but it's like the cliche, everything's connected, is like, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And so that's what you were talking about earlier when you were talking about doing, you know, moving your arms with every part of your body. You're aware, you can train yourself to be aware of the bottoms of your feet, all the way up into your groin, all the way up into your breath, through every single movement that you do through practice, right? And so Would you expand upon that? Like, as far as like, what does the practice look like of both of them? And I know that it could be different, individually different, but like, what does your practice look like, and what does a practice look like?
Well, to get the most out of it, you're trying to integrate everything. And so what you were talking about with your upper back and then your low back and then your pelvis all realigning, right? That's your body becoming more integrated. And
my brain too. I feel it in my brain.
yeah, absolutely, right. Well, and all of these movements are taking place up in the motor cortex up here.
Yeah, I feel it in the energetic systems in my body. I can't quite. I'm using the wrong words, but like I feel like energy in my body, like traveling. Well, I'm having emotional reactions.
Oh, absolutely, right? Because everything. Well, the body, mind, spirit has become a cliche to sell handbags now, but it is actually it's like a real thing. And so, like the guy that I learned all this stuff from, he said that you practice Tai Chi to free your body, and then when you free your body, then you can free your mind, and then when your mind is free, your spirit is able to be open and receive and communicate fully. And so, ideally, to get the most out of like a Tai Chi Qigong practice, you want everything to be integrated, and you're trying to integrate everything, and you're trying to be as receptive as possible. And what you really don't want to do is have it in your head like, I'm going to be like feeling some particular type of feeling in some capacity, or I'm going to be able to launch this guy through a wall, or whatever it is, right? Because then you start to hallucinate because you're so intent on recreating this feeling of like energy that you felt in your body, yesterday, or that you heard somebody talk about, that you begin to like force that idea upon yourself. And then you're just it's a type of a masturbation that a lot of these woo-woo people engage in. But really, ideally, you just want to be very open, because what I do today should feel different than yesterday, right? That's how I know that I've progressed. And there's that whole thing of like, can't ever step in the same river twice.
Yeah, you're a little bit older. Sorry, I was muted there. Yeah, every day is different. You're a little bit older. You ate different food the day before. Right. Everything. Your physiology is a little different.
Totally. But basically, what you want out of the practice is you want everything to integrate, and then when you do abdominal breathing, you are engaging your vagus nerve on the exhale. So when people talk about taking a deep breath, like you want to breathe in, you don't have to hold your breath, but then when you breathe out, the exhale should be at least twice as long as the inhale. The reason for this is that when you're breathing out, your muscles, the way they're using diaphragm, abdominal, pelvic floor, all this stuff, it's contracting, which is like pulling on the vagus nerve, which is getting your brain into the rest, digest, and recover. And just by having your abdominal breathing with all the movements that you're doing, then your legs are then supporting your abdominal breathing. So your abdominal breathing is more profound because of what you're doing with your legs. This is why the adductors are so important, because they are a connection between the pelvic floor and the legs. And if ever anyone asks me a question about Tai Chi or Qigong, I say the answer is always adductors. So if you have a question, right ahead, the answer is adductors, and beyond that, just rotate. But that's it. It's very simple.
I started laughing when he mentioned it, because I think I emailed you on like Saturday, like at 10 p.m. on Saturday night, something along the lines of like, so what you're saying is I can punch somebody in the face with my adductors, and you're like, yes, you can do everything with your adductors.
Absolutely.
And Cotter and I have a rapport, but he would never actually tell you to punch somebody in the face as if he was your practitioner, because he's actually a very peaceful man.
I'm actually, no, it's not that. That's nice of you to say. I did practice how to punch people in the face, and I learned that I was not very good at it. I tried for a quarter of a century. So if you want to learn about face punching, I'm not the best person to ask. If you want to learn about how you can make yourself feel better, then I'm definitely qualified to talk about that.
Yeah, and so yeah. That cracks me up. But you must have learned something for 25 years. Let's talk about your martial arts journey a little bit. Outside of Tai Chi and Qigong. So when did you get into it? What were you trying to accomplish? Like,
oh yeah. So I have a childhood chum who we all went off to different colleges, and then I think he started doing the type of Japanese jiu-jitsu. And when we got back, I think it was his sophomore or junior year.
They're the ones who invented it, right? The Japanese.
Well, yeah, because my Japanese is worse than my Chinese, and my Chinese is abhorrent. But I think jujitsu is something about like gentle something or other. But yeah, but it's a Japanese word. Yeah,
Sorry.
it's a Japanese word. But I'll leave it at that. But anyway, yeah. So he showed me some stuff, and I'm like, wow, this is super cool. And so he was technically my first teacher. He was just started, and then I was very fortunate. I got to go abroad. So I went for my one semester my junior year. So I went to the school in England, and while I was there, I took it was a Japanese kickboxing. It was a Japanese kickboxing, and I had to register with the police department because that's the way they make you do it in the UK, which I thought was really cool. I was like 20 years old. Like, ooh, I'm like a lethal weapon, right? I'm idiot. But and then I got back from that, and I think I did like Taekwondo, I did a Kung Fu. It was called Muay, and it was one of the ones that if you go by like the legendarium of Kung Fu, like Wing Chun was a monk, and she learned a lot of her stuff from Muay, who was also a nun. Wing Chun was a nun, and Buddhist nun, and so was Muay. Apparently they were related. I don't know. I don't know either of those well enough to speak intelligently about it. And then I found Aikido, and so I was doing Taekwondo and Aikido, but I still hadn't gotten myself healthy, so I was about 55 pounds overweight. And then we were doing, and Aikido is this thing where I love Aikido, and it's because of Aikido that I survived a motorcycle crash that would have killed me had I done any other martial art other than Aikido.
It's very useful, yes.
It's amazing, but it is not a way to learn how to fight if you are trying to be like fighting somebody, because the whole thing is a social contract. You are cooperating with each other, right? There's the person doing the technique and the person the technique is being done to.
Correct. Yeah.
And so, but one of the most important things is that like the more force that you put into your agreed upon strike, the more force you're going to generate for your own throw. So being able to roll and fall in Aikido is like the most important thing. And in fact, one of the best guys I ever trained with was only concerned with how well I could take falls and not actually do the throws. That's what he would compliment me on. I was like, oh my gosh, it was like light as a feather. I barely felt you as I was throwing you around, right? It wasn't like, oh, you did a great job doing the throw, because he understood. Like this guy had been in the Navy for years and had also learned other things. And anyway, I digress. So, but we were doing this thing where we're jumping over, we're lining people up, and you got to run and jump over 3 of them, and then do a roll, right? So I did that, and then something went in my knee, but I was only 24, so I'm sure it's fine. And so I did it again, and something else went in my knee. I was like, ooh, now I can't straighten my leg. I guess this was bad. So I had to have knee surgery, and that did not go very well. The surgery was fine, but the recovery period was terrible. My knee got to be the size of a basketball, and I was on crutches. I had to move back to my parents. So I was basically lying in bed, and I could crutch to the bathroom, burst into tears because it hurt so bad to be vertical. And then that was a fun physical therapy did not help at all.
No, it never does.
Well, sometimes it does, but it didn't for me.
It's never helped me.
Well, but anyway, and then I was 3 months on a cane with a cane, like hobbling around. And after that 6 months, my mom and my parents live in Connecticut, so I had to move back into their house. And my mom was like, you need to go visit your friend who lives in San Diego. And San Diego is as far as you can get away from Connecticut on the contiguous United States. So I was like, okay. So I was banished to San Diego, and then
banished.
I think on my second day there, I found a Tai Chi a place that was connected to it said Kung Fu Tai Chi, and I was like, oh, I hear Tai Chi is good for arthritis. I'm going to have arthritis in my knee. I should take a lesson. Plus, it's connected to Kung Fu, and I've already been doing Kung Fu for like 5 years, or doing various martial arts for like 5 years at this point. So I took a lesson, and I fell in love with it instantly. And then the following day, I took a surfing lesson, and I'm a goofy foot, which meant I had to get my gammy knee. I had to get that one up to get it planted. I had my damaged knee was the one that had to be forward. So that took me 2 days before I stood up, but I fell in love with that. And then the next thing I did is I found a job in an apartment, and I had moved to San Diego with just the bag I brought with me in my car. Anyway, so then Tai Chi, surfing every single day for 3 months, and I had lost like 55 pounds. And then
Sounds awesome.
It was
Sounds like the time of your life, right?
It was pretty cool. Well, there was, there were no kids, there was no dog, no
Yeah.
marriage or anything. So yeah,
Yeah. You know, weird synchronicity is that Cotter and I happened to work at the same place, Veterans Village of San Diego, at different times. Like, I think I was there in like 2014, and you were there when?
Well, I didn't work at Veterans.
You didn't work there, but you did volunteer work.
Oh yeah. We did a lot of in my acupuncture school, we did a lot of stuff with veterans.
Yes.
There was veteran stand down in Balboa Park was the biggest event. That was super cool.
Yo, you've been there. That's so cool.
Oh, yeah.
I've been there 3 times. It's like I absolutely love Veteran Stand Down. It's like a dang hippie veteran fest. It's a blast, and so many people get helping connections and stuff. Check out Veteran Stand Down San Diego. I'm friends with the lady who and she actually she did an episode of our show. Her name is Marilyn Cornell. And she's like the lady who runs the thing. But anyway, sorry. Veteran Stand Down's fun. So you're in San Diego, you're surfing, you're doing Tai Chi, you're young, you're having a good time. And then like I remember you telling me like when we first met that you really like the Tai Chi, like you basically took to instantly, like more than anything you've ever taken to in your life. And it's like you said, it's the exact opposite of like trying to like really punch somebody in the face in a combat sport type way. The way you would go to an MMA gym is the exact opposite almost of a Tai Chi class. So you were practicing both of these things at the same time, or
yes,
or what?
Well, I didn't take MMA until a few years ago after I moved to Georgia, and I'd already been doing Tai Chi for at that
long
point
time,
like 18 years.
Okay.
And what was really interesting is that when the first time I worked out with the coach I had in MMA, he's like, all right, and this guy was like a legitimate. He trained with the Gracies and been in.
I know the guy you're talking about.
Yeah. So he's like a real fighter, and he's like, all right, I'm gonna do the mount, see if you can get out anything you want, right? And I couldn't move, and I was like, oh my god, 18 years of thinking that I have this like secret mastery and I can do whatever I want to anybody was just like.
Jiu-jitsu does that to people, and he's not a large person either, is he?
Oh no, not at all, Yeah, I mean, it's just like I've seen him do jiu-jitsu with a guy who weighed almost 300 pounds, but was a heavyweight wrestler, and it was just like and not just like a 300-pound biker, right? Like a 300-pound like athlete who like went to the Olympics. Yeah, so jiu-jitsu. Like there is this idea amongst a lot of Tai Chi people that they have this like that they're like superheroes, which is wrong, right? If you're thinking about beating people up, like if you want to learn how to hurt somebody, MMA is absolutely the way to go. But if you want to learn how to fix yourself and then fix other people, then Tai Chi is the way to go. And I would argue, if Tai Chi does have a benefit that you get from it that other arts, that if Tai Chi excels at anything that other like combat arts, versus other combat arts, it's situational awareness. There's something about moving in that way, becoming really centered. You begin to just like read people in a new way. You begin to just read the environment in a new way. And so I would argue that Tai Chi has done more for me to avoid a bad situation than anything else I could have done would have like gotten me out of a bad situation that I found myself in. So if Tai Chi really is the grand ultimate art, it would be the grand ultimate in avoiding something before it became a fight. And then if you go back to Sun Tzu, he said the ideal of combat is victory without fighting, right? Like the art of war, like the ultimate general is one who's going to win without ever engaging the enemy's forces. So in that regard, Tai Chi is the grand ultimate fist. But if you're actually like tactically, if your forces are going at each other, no, you do not want to be using Tai Chi. You want to have trained in jiu-jitsu and boxing and wrestling, all that stuff.
Yeah. So like, I a bit know the answer to this, but I did something similar to this at the age of 37. I had done jujitsu for maybe 2 years total, like for like 6 months here or 6 months there. I had done a lot of boxing just on my own, and like I also started going to boxing gyms as a child. At a young age, so I learned the fundamentals young. And then same, like I've moved around a lot, so I've been to a lot of boxing gyms. But when I came here to Georgia, I got a bug, like before I get too old, I'm gonna learn MMA. And I chose to have an amateur. The goal was to have an amateur Muay Thai fight before I turned 40, was my goal. And so I put together like a big plan. I found a gym I liked, and like I made friends with the owners. I told them my intentions. They set me up with the instructor, and they liked the idea too. So like I had a personal instructor, but I would also go to class. And I worked really hard on it for about a year. And I was running and I was lifting weights and I was doing Muay Thai 2 to 3 times a week, and I was doing jujitsu twice a week. And this is all what added up to me eventually being in a essentially disabled, like there's no other way to put it. In 2021, I couldn't stand, sit, or walk or lay down without like a 7 out of 10 pain. And that lasted for 3 years. I tried stem cells, physical therapy, and I'm not just to rewind. I'm not telling everyone to not do their physical therapy. If you have surgery, go to your physical therapy. What I'm saying is, and Cotter will Cotter was like, didn't want to agree with me there, and I know why. It's because you do need the physical therapy, and he's a medical professional, okay? But you can't just go to run-of-the-mill physical therapy that they give you for 12 weeks on your insurance after you have a major surgery and call it good. This is coming from somebody who's had a bunch of surgeries and ended up in this condition. You must learn to restore the brain body connections that you're going to lose. And you may not get that at a traditional physical therapist because what happens is they're working around insurance rules. They're seeing 5 patients at the same time. They're not watching you at all a lot of the times. And if you're younger, you're a lower priority for them. They need to be watching the older people, yada, yada. So this is my experience with physical therapy. So I'm just wanted to give that context. But I wish, as soon as I finished physical therapy, after my first major surgery, somebody was like, hey, go do some Tai Chi and learn that. I wanted to kind of pivot towards acupuncture.
Yeah.
As we start tying things together. So you practice Tai Chi, practice Qigong, and you're also into martial arts. How did Tai Chi and when did Tai Chi during your journey come as part of the?
Yeah. So my drinking buddy was a neuroscientist with a photographic memory who could read a book like that quickly and retain everything.
I love people like that.
Oh, they're fascinating. They're wonderful.
Yeah.
So he was doing. He's a neuroscientist, so he was doing research on some background. He was a mathematician. He was a physicist who applied his understanding of physics to neuroscience. So he was both a physicist and a neuroscientist. So again, I was very lucky to meet him, like a fascinating person.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, he was doing some reading, some background reading for something he was doing with neuroscience, and it happened upon a study talking about acupuncture and using an fMRI on the brain. So MRI is when you go to get your knee in an MRI, right? It's like a static, 3D image, right? fMRI, the F stands for functional magnetic resonance imaging. So what that does is it shows you the change of blood flow in various parts of the brain. So if a part of the brain is being activated, it's going to have an increase in blood flow. It's going to be deactivated, it's going to have a decrease in blood flow, right? That's where like lighting up the brain, it means it's more activities happening there. So it is, whatever he was doing, he was reading about this study, and he goes, oh, acupuncture, that's interesting. So of course, when he did a little background on that, he probably read more on it than I've ever read in like, a sitting. And he's like, oh, acupuncture and Tai Chi have the same background, right? So now, like, the way my life worked at this point, I'd wake up before dawn, I'd surf for the sunrise, drive out to my office. I was working as a teacher, or drive to the school and then teach, and then I'd come back, and then I would do the Tai Chi class, then the Kung Fu class, then I'd go home and I'd go to bed, and I'd do exactly the same thing the next day. And then on some days when I wasn't working, I would stay and I'd surf. And then after I was finished surfing, I'd go get some coffee, and then I'd journal for a while. And then my buddy woke up around noon. I'd go over to his house and we'd drink beer and we'd talk for like hours and hours and hours and hours. And as I said, he could just he'd just wake up and he'd drink. It was great. We had a great time. But anyway, so he mentioned this, and I would talk about Tai Chi all the time. The guy I was learning from was super fascinating. He worked as an enforcer for the triads. But he taught me Tai Chi, which was very, so it was not what you would expect.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But yeah, so it was super fun. And then, so anyway, what I would talk about, I'm obsessed with it. And, I'd be going blah, 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 blah. And I'd talk about my teacher and about the other people, and my teacher had a group up in LA and a group in San Diego. And the group in LA were all from China. The group in LA was only one guy from China. So there was like that whole East-West competition. We would have, matches between the various schools. And so it was interesting. And so I talked to my buddy about this. And then, so he's like, by the way, did you ever know this? And I was like, because you're obsessed with Tai Chi, did you know about this acupuncture connection? I said, I did not. And I had a girlfriend whose parents were from Taiwan, and she had acupuncture once. And I thought what she said about it was kind of silly, but no, I had no experience to it. So then I went home, and I had been working in a private school, and I had just applied to the San Diego school to get my teaching degree so I could be a public school teacher. So I'd just been accepted. So I had all my application stuff was on my desk. And I looked up on the internet, and I was like, oh, there's an acupuncture school right here in San Diego. Rather than go get a treatment just to see what it feels like, I really care about, understanding the body this way, and like, what can I apply to my Tai Chi? Remember the nerd thing. I just wanted to read as much as I could. So I just repackaged all my application stuff to the acupuncture school, figuring, okay, what's one more student loan semester? Oh, I'm going to be a teacher. I'll have plenty of money. And then, so then I went to the acupuncture school. They accepted me. They had no standards. And then after the first 5 minutes on the first class of the first day, I was like, oh my God, this is what I was put here on this world to do. So I went home and I called the education program, and I was like, hey, I'm going to be an acupuncturist. Like, oh, okay. Like they've probably heard that before, being in San Diego. But yeah, so then I'm sitting, I'm learning all this stuff about acupuncture, learning all this stuff about Chinese medicine, Eastern medicine, herbs. And then they also taught us, we had the same bioscience curriculum that nurses have. So I'm learning like anatomy and physiology and pathology, all this stuff. And then I also enrolled in the massage program, figuring that I can just learn massage. I can be a massage therapist while I'm going through this 4-year school. And then it wasn't until 2 weeks into the program that I had one of my classmates actually try to needle the spot right here. And she went there, which was, that's like if in our world, if you think about that miss, it's like going to a shooting range, turning around and shooting out your own windshield, like that 1 inch away. There's another spot here, but she wasn't there either. So I didn't say anything to her because I didn't want to make her upset. But I went home and I looked at the book and I was like, oh, she didn't get that. So then I did it myself, and it was like, whoa. So then I went back to my book, looked at all the stuff for my knee, which was still bothering me a little bit. It was a lot better with the Tai Chi, but there was still a way to go. So I started working on my knee, and then woke up the next day, and then my knee had felt the best it had felt, ever. I mean, since the injury. And so then it was just like I worked on myself almost every single day. So I'm probably the only acupuncturist who never had acupuncture before he went to acupuncture school. Like I can
That's funny.
Just being a weirdo, I'm like, made me unique, and that's my one claim to fame. But
is it normal for acupuncturists to acupuncture themselves?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Because imagine that you wake up and you're like, oh man, I feel this like sinus headache. right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, all I have to do to fix that sinus headache is
poke a needle in your forehead.
right. No, in my hand.
Oh.
Right. So I'll take advantage of this here. So this spot. So like this spot right here. Let's say my sinus headache is more on the left, right? So this spot right here, all I have to do is do this. And then my headache will be gone in a matter of moments, maybe 5 minutes, right? So why would I not do that if I knew how to do it? I'd have to have some really weird hang up about not needling myself. Plus, on top of that, like when I work on a patient now, like every time I put a needle in, there's years of experience going into that, right?
Yes.
So it's going to be, and you're getting stabbed with a small little wire. So, there's some level of discomfort. But the very first time I ever needled a patient in the clinic, like I had to have practiced on somebody before I worked on them, right? So we practice on each other. And if I only worked on my classmates, I would have had a lot less time needling people before my very first patient. And so I think all of us worked on ourselves just so we would not like hurt our classmates terribly. Like there's some places I can't reach on myself, obviously. So I've never needled those, but any of the ones that I can reach, yes, I've put a needle there. And I believe most acupuncturists have too, but I haven't done a scientific survey of that.
Got it. Yeah. This is where I was going earlier, but I kind of needed to backtrack around. But I wanted to do MMA because I've always been an MMA fan, and I just always wanted to see if I could do it. And then I fell in love with Muay Thai as an art form, so that's what I always want. So I decided to try it, and that was kind of like my thing. But I wanted to ask you, because I remember it's because they're so different, and you're like, okay, Tai Chi, here's this like thing that I'm really attuned to right away, and you spend all this time doing it. Why did you then decide to do sort of the exact opposite martial art in your late 30s?
Oh yeah, no, actually, it was my early 40s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
why?
So, like most people, I suffer from anxiety, and like many people, I did not think anxiety was very manly, so I refused to acknowledge it was anxiety. And then what would happen is that negative emotion needed to turn into something, and for me, it turned into anger. And so I thought I had anger issues, and then I needed to have martial arts as a healthy way to express those anger issues.
Beat the shit out of Ed Bag or your buddy.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And I would spar with the other guys in my Kung Fu class and stuff, but like, I never did like a real like match or anything like that. But even in just like practice, like it's like a healthy way to get that aggression out. I think that's awesome. But then, I had it in my head that because I'd had this Tai Chi practice, because I had Aikido, because I'd had, the Kung Fu, the Taekwondo, that I probably was fairly competent when it came to, fighting. But I also understood that like, I'm going to butcher the Brazilian here, but what do they call it? The predecessor to MMA, the Tulevada? It means
Tudo,
no holds.
Ballet Tudo.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Right.
You're welcome.
They'd already done all of that in Brazil, and then they already got all the various arts together, and like they were very scientific about it, right? And then MMA, like that was a very scientific, like, okay, you think it works, put these two people together, see what happens, right? And have it happen enough times, you get some good data from it. So I knew that that like the MMA thing had science, and I love science. I'm not a scientist, but I've always been a fan of science and scientists. So I knew that it was, had been scientifically demonstrated to be
which works and why.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I wanted to do it because I was like, oh, I'm in my early 40s. I'm insecure about that. I want to prove to myself that I've still got it.
There's some insecurity for me too. Yeah, like I want to be able to like kick somebody's ass if I have to, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I had already been I had already been in my late 20s and I'd already been in my mid 30s. So I'd already been really dumb and been a huge asshole and gotten myself into situations where I was able to test what I had learned, and it worked out very well because I was uninjured and I came away victorious. The other person wasn't hurt, right? So I'm like, okay, like I can do it, right? And I had it in my head that I was a good fighter because, you know, I could like start a fight with a drunk punk and come out on top, right? Again, monster insecurity. But I had never like fought a real fighter. So I didn't know. And so I thought it would be interesting to try that. And then
it's very humbling.
it is. Well, especially when I like all my Tai Chi was like
right.
helped.
Your last 25 years just went out the window.
Oh yeah. Well, and then when I was working out with my coach and he's like, okay, we're gonna have like a legit sparring thing. I'm not gonna take it easy on you. And he hit me right on the mandibular angle, right on the corner of my jaw, on the masseter muscle. The first time I'd ever been punched in the face by somebody who knew how to box. I'd only been punched in the face by kung fu nerds before. And that happened many times, and it didn't bother me. When this dude hit me, it was like, whoa, this is not like I do not like this. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah. Getting punched in the face sucks.
Yeah. And then I also, at the same time, my marriage had begun to deteriorate and I started going to therapy. And I realized that like, I'm not actually angry. I've just not been honest with this anxiety that I have and let me address my anxiety. So I began addressing my actual anxiety and I use cognitive behavioral therapy, which I'm a huge fan of. I endorse that wholeheartedly. And before I knew it, I was getting to my anxiety before it had time to turn into this anger. And I was like, well, shit, I don't have anger anymore. On top of that, like I have no desire to need to use all my healing knowledge to fix myself up after I have a sparring match, you know, once every month or two. And then it just was like, I just stepped out of that. I'd had a foot in both worlds and I just put both feet into the healing martial arts or the medicinal martial arts, like I call them.
Got it. So you were doing the whole MMA thing probably for similar reason I was.
Not
similar
quite.
reason I was over it. Well, it's
Not
similar
quite.
in that like over exercising, over doing. I'm doing MMA. Like in the end, I was dealing with a lifetime of anxiety or trauma and stuff like that, and like I was running from it every single day. I was beating the shit out of my heavy bag. I was running at 5 a.m. I was lifting weights. Anything I could do to exhaust myself to total completion, so that I didn't have to feel anxious, right? And it got out of control. So I was doing it for anxiety reasons, is what I'm saying.
For sure. Yeah. Well, you were doing it. I actually my body was very healthy and happy. Like I was in excellent shape. I wasn't overtraining because I'd already been doing acupuncture for years. So I already knew about, treating people that overtrained. I just had it in my head that I was a fighter or could be a fighter, right? I hadn't learned that, yeah, right? Like I hadn't learned that. No. I am a witch doctor. Yeah, no, I'm a healer. Like that is, I'm really good at that. I'm going to stick to that. That other stuff, I'm going to use my situational awareness to just not need to do it.
So. I'm going to stay dual classed. I'm going to be like a fighter cleric.
Well, that's like there are people like that for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I think and knowing who you are is very important because if you don't feed that one part of yourself, then it hollows us out on the inside and we suffer for it. So like if you're actually a fighter, then you should be doing responsible consensual fighting, in order to keep that part of yourself nourished.
Like join the military or do combat sports or something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I really appreciate your vulnerability and like sharing, about that and the anxiety piece because, we all have anxiety, we got to find healthy ways to deal with it. Cognitive behavioral therapy, like, is it evidence-based psychotherapy that helps people identify and change negative thought patterns and behaviors? So like, because I'm literally a mental health practitioner and I do CBT with people. There's only certain types of clients that I really bother with the actual CBT because it's very homework based. Were you doing homework when you're doing CBT?
So the first therapist I had, it was one of the ones over BetterHelp, right? So it's
Yes,
totally a crapshoot.
betterhelp.com. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And my thought was, is like, okay,
10% off.
right. And my thought was, all right, even if I get a shitty therapist, I'm going to approach this in a way because I'd had 2 semesters of clinical counseling when I was in acupuncture school, and with acupuncture, because the needles will put somebody into
Emotional states. Yeah.
their rest and digest, it's very normal for people to start crying about things, just talking about things, and so I mean, I like part of my practice is being a therapeutic presence for other people,
And
right?
you are, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
But so I was going at this like with not totally like confused and coming off the couch for the like I was going into this as like somebody who'd been initiated into the arts
Sure.
of helping, right? So I was
Sure.
like, okay, I'm going to get the most out of this as I possibly can. And unfortunately, the guy that I was working with really loved the smell of his own farts and thought that he was outstanding and he did all the homework. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to get the most out of this I can, even though I know what this guy is. I've worked with, like, I've had colleagues like this, right? Like, like if you are a salesperson, you can tell the techniques a salesperson's using with you. Like, it's the same thing with mental health people, well, as you know, right? Working with mental health. So, he wanted me doing all that crap, and I did. And then I was like, okay, there's no reason to do this. This whole thing, it comes from um, the Vipassana, right? Which is one of the oldest forms of Buddhist meditation, which you take Vipassana and then you take out all of the religious stuff and all the philosophical stuff, and you just talk about the physical and mental techniques, and that's mindfulness, which John Kabat-Zinn is, the big poster person for. He really championed that. And then you distill mindfulness down one extra layer, and then you get cognitive behavioral therapy, where you are where you're using the techniques of getting yourself out of, and the way I think of it is that basically being in a subjective state of mind will eventually lead you to anxiety regardless of what it is. If you're asking what, why, how, you will become
all the
anxious.
time. Yeah.
It's just a question of when, not if, right? And so what cognitive behavioral therapy does, the first aspect of, is to be able to recognize that you are on one of your negative things, right? Then the technique, which they get from Vipassana, mindfulness, right, down to cognitive behavioral therapy, is getting yourself out of the subjective mind into the objective mind. So
noticing it and then reframing
the
thought.
And you've got to get another posture, another mental posture, go from subjective to objective, and you do that like. Well, the way I find to be very useful is just cataloging the colors, right? You just start listing all the colors that you see, because that takes you into a very objective posture. Then you're paying attention to right now, and then you go, okay, what of my, what do they call it, core beliefs? What of those 3 or 4 core beliefs were triggered? And the way I talk about it with people is like, your core beliefs, it can be totally arbitrary. You don't have to like do some deep dive, figure out what's really bothering you. Just pick one and just allow that to be the reason you're getting upset. And then you pick that, okay, it's my insecurity around money, right? So that's what got me triggered in this. So I'm just going to go pay one bill. I'm not going to do my own taxes. I'm not going to balance I'm not going to go examine my bank account. I'm not going to look at all my subscriptions. I'm just going to pay one bill, right? And you make one step to, so you feel good about yourself. You've done something, but then you've taken a step towards that anxiety avoidance cycle. So you're trying to take away fuel and less perpetual momentum going into that anxiety avoidance cycle through your activity, right? And that would be the So that's how I look at it, and I think of it as like a very simple philosophical, like, what are you doing principle with this? And like all the homework stuff, that tends to be like the way education system is fixated on test results for people. It's giving people busy.
The reason why I say homework based is because that's how they teach therapists how to give it, right? It's like, here's like, use these worksheets, use this workbook, fill out this log. What you really need to do is learn to be aware, like you said, of your internal monologue that's unhelpful, and then catch that before it gets out of control, and then reframe it in a way that like doesn't freak you out, right? And it's more based and grounded in reality and in like you mentioned, values that you want to have today, right? Versus like maybe values or thoughts you about yourself or the world you had 20 years ago or something. And so I get what I'm getting at is you have to nerd out on that a little bit too to get the best out of it, don't you think?
I don't think so. And I think the reason that it's taught the way it's taught is because they're not going to take a therapist and they're not going to say, here's Vipassana meditation, let's start, right? Because if you go to Vipassana school today, it's basically a week of silent meditation.
Yes.
And right now, I don't think that one needs to do a week of silent meditation in order to understand. I've never done that. I don't think one needs to do that in order to get the basics of all of this.
Sure.
But you do. But if you approach this as what are the mechanics of meditation, right? So, like when you're going to meditate, if you're not arranging your spine in a certain way and you're not breathing with your abdomen, you're never going to be able to meditate properly. Because if you don't do that, you don't get your vagus nerve involved, you don't take yourself out chemically, you don't take yourself out of fight or flight, put yourself into rest, digest, and recover. Because when you're stimulating the vagus nerve, you're releasing acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter, which makes you relaxed and focused, which is meditation, right? So all these guided meditation things do a wonderful job paying for people's condos and cars and vacations and fancy lifestyles, the people selling them, that is. But like that's not going to help with what meditation can do, which is get you to free your thinking so you can be aware of what's actually happening around you, so you can engage with the world in the best way possible. If you look at it just as a way of taming anxiety, that's not what it's for, right? Like there are generals and samurai, who do meditation. They're not doing it to not have anxiety. They're doing it to be better killers, right? I mean, it's like meditation makes you better at who you are. So if you don't get your spine arranged the right way, you don't do abdominal breathing, it's not going to work. The other thing that you have to do is you have to recognize that your train of thought is always going to be going. There's no turning that thing off, right? That's not going to stop till it may not even stop when we're dead. We don't even know that, right? But the idea of like, oh, I got to get my mind to be quiet. It's not quiet. Well, it's not supposed to be.
Cotter, I gotta say that is a fucking exhausting idea that my fucking monkey brain is gonna keep going after I die. Like that's the only thing that makes dying rewarding.
Well, that might be the ultimate trick. It's like, oh, you thought this was your way out. Sorry, it gets accelerated.
Yeah.
Now you thought you only had these thoughts because you had a brain. You had less thoughts because the brain was confining consciousness to a single place. Now it's conscious outside of the brain. It's all the things happen all at once, right? So there's no avoiding this. So what you do with meditation is you say, okay, I'm not going to fixate on that thing that's going past. Well, how do I not fixate on it? Well, if I say don't fixate, that is a form of fixation. Say, okay, just go back to the breath, right? Go pay attention to what's happening right now. And then you begin to recognize when you're attaching to an idea. And if you attach to an idea, you're going to perpetuate that. So if you're fixating on something that like, oh, that dude cut me off, he's an asshole, and I'm just going back to that, I'm just going to get mad. And then all of a sudden, now I'm upset because my cousin beat me up when I was 4, right? It's just like, it just takes you're stuck in that angry, frame of mind. Whereas if you just like, okay, that guy cut me off, I'm not even going to say he was an asshole. I'm just going to cut me off. And you just go back to the breathing. You just you learn to just go back to right now. That's the same thing with cataloging the colors. You just get yourself back into that objective state. When you can be objective with your mind and not subjective, then when consciousness appears through the objective lens, it's very, very different than if you assume consciousness is me. It's a subjective thing, right? And so,
but I'm real, Cotter. I'm real.
You are.
I'm a real
you totally
boy.
Are. You're objectively real. But when you're subjectively real, that's going to go through the monkey process of trying to protect your fig tree or running away from the bigger monkey tribe that's just arrived to take the figs from you, right? So it's like, if you think about cognitive behavioral therapy like that, it's actually a brilliant way to do it. And we're shooting ourselves in the foot by making it this big, like school, all these exercises.
Right. Yeah, and it's the first time I ever heard it explained that way. That you put it like you basically it's the baseline even before Vipassana, like and I think that's actually quite brilliant, because it literally has to start there. There's no other place to start. Is like paying attention to what's actually going on in your mind and becoming slowly aware of the monkey brain and slowly aware that there's a watcher, of your thoughts that's separate from those thoughts. What does Eastern tradition say about that guy who's like watching me think?
So, oh boy, it says a lot, and I I am not academically qualified to comment on that, so I'll just talk about Cotter the dude rather than someone pretending he's an expert on that.
Great.
So what I have read about that, there's like Atman Brahman, and I can never keep track of which is what, but these are Indian philosophical concepts. One is like Atman, let's just say I think it's Atman, is just consciousness is in and of itself as a thing. And this would be kind of what like Schrodinger was talking about before they switched up and put the whole multiverse in there. Ta-da!
Mm-hmm.
And then Brahman.
I see what you did there.
Yeah. And then Brahman is like the sense of self or the Godhead that is associated with Atman. And I know I'm butchering this, and if you care,
it's okay. If anyone who really knows this by detail,
and they want to, if they, this is the spirit. This is being offered is just trying to be helpful and humble here. So that's one thing that says about it. Interestingly, to my knowledge, the Chinese, what we understand as Chinese philosophy, didn't really start talking about this until Chan, and Chan is the Chinese word for Buddhism. So Buddhism, it went over the Himalayas into China, and then it went over the ocean into Japan and we know it as Zen. So as Buddhism traveled through China to Japan, it kind of like it went from like the Vipassana stuff and the Theravada and Mahayana. I'm not forgetting. Anyway, but so like you have the Buddhism in India is a little bit different than Zen Buddhism, right? And like that's because it went through China and then got to Japan. So like there's the Chinese Chan, which is kind of like somewhere in between those two. Mm-hmm. You didn't really have, to my knowledge, they weren't really talking about this stuff until Buddhism came to China. The Chinese stuff, which I am a little bit more qualified to speak on, that like with Taoism, that was really everything gets taken back to the way, right? And then they talk about and then heaven is underneath the way, because it's like the way of heaven. So heaven is like the way everything works out, right? The whole world, the universe in English. And so the idea is, one of the things in the Tao, it says like first there was the one, or the E, and that is described as the uncarved block. So a block, technically, literally, is a piece of stone that you've carved into a block, right? Mm-hmm. So an uncarved block is not a block, but so we get to that like Wasan one hand clapping. Uh-huh. There's a koan right there, mm-hmm. And so after that, then that differentiates into the yin and the yang. And, you have the E, which is the uncarved block, and then you have the yin and the yang, and then yin and yang are two things that require one another to be there in order to be there themselves. So like yang is hot, yin is cold. Well, you can't have the concept of hot and cold without the other, right? And then there's some really interesting things about it. Yang is what you see, yin is what you don't see. But yang is insubstantial, but yin is substantial, which is really cool from the little bit I understand from modern physics, because like the substances that I'm touching, like the thing that my table that I'm touching, that's actually not the substance. The substance is like these little molecules, which I can't even see an interface with. So that's yin and yang, like allows for this, right?
Correct.
So so you have the one, then you have the two, and then from the interplay of yin and yang, that's where you get the three, right? Change from yin to yang, differentiation between those two. And then from the three come the myriad things. And the myriad things is like the Chinese word for everything. And so the way that the Taoists understand the mind is that the idea of Wu Wei, so the action of inaction, which again, your uncarved block again. So it's that same principle of you want to pay attention to what's happening so you can just go with the flow, go with the way things are going. And from that, we could sort of reverse engineer a point of view which would certainly seem to align with the Vipassana and the Buddhist worldview and the Zen worldview. But they come from different, at least what we understand them to be different, schools of thought. But there's only one mind we have, right? I mean, it's all basically the same thing. There's just lots of different ways of describing it. And so I would think that you're going to get to these, like Eastern thinking, they all kind of arrive to a similar conclusion. Whereas what we call the Western thinking, that's where we take, so we have Socrates, who, to my understanding, wanted everything to end in aporia, where you couldn't tell one or the, you could go down to two things, but you can't really decide which one's correct. So the Socratic method is where you argue with somebody to get them to the point where, like, I'm going to hold that, like, X is true, and you're going to go, okay, well, how about Y in this capacity? And we'll argue X and Y, and you take me to the point where I can't say Y is not true and X is the only truth, right? So that's the Socratic method, right? Pretty Taoist, pretty Buddhist in that regard. But then you have Socrates' student, Plato, and Plato, unlike Socrates, writes everything down. And one of the things Plato does in his writings is he establishes pretty clearly this idea of, like, the world of forms and then the world of matter. And then, like, matter is trying to express what's happening in the abstract world of forms, but it can never fully do it accurately. And then his student Aristotle is like, no, it's not, matter and forms are not, it's not, the world isn't too, like, the world of form and the world of matter. It really, everything is all here in the material world, and, like, everything has an essence, everything has an elemental component to it, right? So Aristotle is brilliant at saying, like, the reason a rock falls is because it's made of earth and is trying to return to earth. Okay. So then Western thinking takes Aristotle and then it puts it, and then it runs it through the ringer, and then it gets eventually to Thomas Aquinas. And then Thomas Aquinas really puts the final touch on authoritarian doctrinarism, which we get. The Romans take the Greek thinking, they take actual, like, the Jesus stuff, actual, like, what Jesus actually said, but then they put it into, like, an authoritarian, this is how we're going to make an empire, everything's coming through, blah, blah, blah. And then, so it's like, it's very Roman type of a thought. So what we're considering, like, the Western frame of mind is, like, a very Roman, this is how it is because I said so, right? The reason I bring Jesus into this is, like, Jesus said, I just love everybody, be nice to everybody.
Yeah.
But then Paul said, you got to have the church, and there's all these rules. And Jesus is like, women are actually the center of my ministry. And Paul says, women can't talk at church. But, like, this woman really was beneficial for my ministry. But don't think about that too hard, right? And so you get this so it's like, it's this way because I said so. And it has to have a single definable truth where one thing can be real, and that means other things are not real. Whereas the Eastern stuff, it all kind of boils down to what we call aporia in Socrates' word, or, like, this undifferentiation, the uncarved block, or, like, painful attention. And then there's the Atman Brahman thing, which I can't speak intelligently enough about those two, but that's very interesting to me, and I've always wanted to learn more, and I've never done so. But
that was a really good job at, like, answering I literally was like, answer the question of life, the universe, and everything, please, and wrap 42! It all up. 42. Wrap it all up into a nice bun for me. But my takeaway from that is that as we shifted into quote unquote Western philosophy, they became, like, sort of two separate ways of viewing the world, and it affected how we view ourselves and our minds, right? Which is really strange when you think about it, like, because experientially it changes how, like, your experience as a human, based on, like, philosophers from, like, centuries ago. Your experience as a human is, like, who I am, what is the seat of my soul, like, what's, like, the watcher in my mind, like, all that stuff was determined by, like, some dude who's been dead hundreds of years ago, and then that's been built into society. It's very strange. It's just interesting to me. That's why I think when people who are structured, their minds are structured in a Western way, they get suddenly introduced into Eastern philosophy, it's so like, whoa, sometimes it's like, because it's so like unstructured, so to speak. That's why you called that like the formless block.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Nice. And so you put all this together, acupuncture, Tai Chi, Qigong, and you're putting all this together. You've been on this journey, right? Kind of leading to this point. And then not too long ago, you got hit by a car.
Oh, yeah.
What
Oh, yeah.
happened? And then,
It was
and then this
fabulous.
but this is I want to stress that this is like a sort of a moment for you where you pivoted kind of hard in your life somehow. Can you explain what happened?
Well, okay, so in I live in North Georgia, and we have highways that go through rural parts of the country. And
Yeah, they're great.
Right, they're fabulous. And if you ride a motorcycle, you want to be on them. The downside is that because it's rural, there are people whose actual houses have a mailbox, and their driveway goes right out onto the highway. And this is it. You're legally, the speed limit is 55 miles an hour, and someone can pull out of their driveway when you go on 55. And so they're basically, the short version of the setup is there was a high school kid who was trying to get out of his driveway, did not see me behind the car that I was behind, and he was trying to get in front of the car coming the other direction. He did not look left when the car in front of me went in front. I saw him in his driveway and slowed down. So I was probably only going 45, 50 as opposed to 55 plus. And then I think, okay, I'm basically past him. I'm good. Then I turned my head forward, and that's when he darted out very quickly, trying to get in front of the... If he had pulled out normally, I could have gone around him, right? But he went out flooring it to try to get in front of the car coming in the direction. And my first thought was, like, I was angry. Like, how dare you? Like, you violated the rules of the road, right? It was like the proceduralist in me was very displeased.
So you're like rolling through like the concrete asphalt or something off your motorcycle after being hit by a car, and you're thinking, procedure, what a terrible driver that son of a...
This is so when you have a big dump of adrenaline, how time slows down to these like frozen moments. I haven't even made impact for the car yet. I'm still riding along. My first thought is, like, you've ignored etiquette. Like, how dare you? This breach of etiquette shall not stand. Right? That's
I might die.
That wasn't even that. It had nothing to do with that. My first thought was, how dare you not follow etiquette? Right? I was raised in Connecticut. Okay, so like that's where my mind defaults to. You're not behaving well, sir. Right? So then my second thought was, this is going to really hurt. And then I remember I was putting on the brake, and I don't even remember initiating the swerve because I was going to, But then when I looked at the picture that I took. The motorcycle had embedded itself directly in the right behind the wheel well of the car, which is on the double yellow line. So I had actually started the swerve. So my next thought was just, my memory was just, I'm vertical, and I'm just looking down at the hood of the car, which to this day, I swear to God, was white. But then when I looked at the photograph later, it was gray, which was very interesting because you hear about eyewitnesses and stress and the data not being accurate. Like, okay, yeah, I experienced that. Like, in my memory is of a white car, but the photograph I took myself with my own phone was a gray car. So then the next thing I have in my like adrenaline, memory is the visor of my helmet is gone because it's the tint, I don't have tinted view anymore. And my eyes are looking up to the right, and I see the whole world go zip around a central point. Oof. And in the back of my mind, I go, oh, I must have done a roll. Good thing I did all that Aikido, because I never could have done that on purpose, right? And then it's fucking blackout. And then the next thing I know, I'm laying on my back, and this woman's like, don't get up. I'm like, I have to get out of the road. I try to get up, and I fall back down. But then I get myself up, and I go and I pull my phone out of the saddlebag, which is weird that it was there. I normally never put it there, but I did that day. Took a picture of the bike. The saddlebag was like half hanging off. The front tire of my bike was going this way. The fork was going that. The handlebars are going that way. And the car was, the airbag had been deployed. I mean,
So you were trying to get like evidence, basically.
Well, I was just doing what you would do, right? Picture this thing, right? And then the ambulance appears, and I sit down on the ambulance, and I noticed, I didn't see at the time, but the gas tank of my motorcycle had a big dent on it right in front of the seat. And so you can imagine what part of my anatomy made that dent. So I got a big ice bag and I stuffed that down my pants.
Ugh.
And I was sitting there in the ambulance, just,
Did you have a head injury at all?
no, because I did the
Because I'm thinking,
roll,
why don't they have immobilization on you?
because I was fucking fine except for my
Because of
nuts.
the Aikido.
It was the Aikido. It was like because I'd done the Aikido roll so frequently, like, and it just my body just did a Aikido roll. And so the only thing I broke both big toes, and then I had a gash here and a gash here because I wasn't wearing it. It was the first day I
Right.
wasn't wearing. It was earlier. It was like early spring. Oh no, it was April 30th.
You
And so it
broke
was a nice
what?
April 30th this year.
No, you broke what? Both big toes?
Both big toes. Yeah, both
Wow,
big
that's
toes.
that is rough. You
Yeah, it
need
was.
big toes.
Oh, they're very important. They're very, very important.
Yeah.
When you're using every muscle in your body to lift your arm, right? Doing Tai Chi, like the big toes, that play a big role. But anyway, so yeah, but other than that, but I did have a concussion because as I decelerated in my head, like there's scratching on the helmet, but
So
not
there's
like
no
a big
neck
pain.
injury, no C-spine issue.
Totally fine. I just
Okay.
had the gash on the arm, both big toes were broken, and then and my nuts swelled
Yeah.
considerably. And in the hospital, the ER doc is like, "Oh, you're going to lose that left one." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Well, we'll wait to hear what the specialist says." And 45 minutes, specialist's like, "No. There's blood flow. That'll be fine."
Why
I'm
would he
thinking,
say that? He
why
shouldn't
would you
have said
fucking
that
say
at all.
that? Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, I don't know. It's like all men are basically big boys. You don't tell a big boy he's going to lose one of his testicles unless you're absolutely positive that thing's coming out.
You know what I
Anyway.
find interesting about that, though, is you know how the phrase people always say, "I'd give my left nut for that." It's
Yeah,
funny
I
that it
would.
was the left one,
I know.
but you
Yeah, I
wouldn't give
know.
you
I
you.
wouldn't give either. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I would not give either enough for that shit. So anyway, so yeah,
But it
but
changed you. You had a change, right?
completely, right? Because like so as I did the roll, my brain smashed against the back of my skull, and
Mhm,
that's how I got a concussion. But I'd never actually hit my head, but my brain
mhm.
did hit my skull.
Sure,
Um,
yeah.
and then so I dizziness, blah blah blah, and I gave myself lots of acupuncture, took herbs, all these things. But then what was really interesting is that, if you think of video games, right? Like my health bar went from 100 to basically 1.
Mhm,
And in the video games, if your health bar goes from 100 to 1, all your stats usually will stay the same. But my dexterity went down, my constitution went down, my charisma went down, my intelligence went down, my wisdom went down. Like I lost all, like I could barely move, even
mhm.
though like nothing was broken. And then a week later, I noticed that my rotator cuff tendons were inflamed from hanging on so tight and being ripped off the motorcycle. But so I basically had to go back and do all my Tai Chi and Qigong with a body that, I only had 2 broken toes and my nuts were swollen. But I had to go back through all this stuff, like I actually when I learned this stuff originally, like yeah, my knee had been bothering me, it was bad, and I was overweight. But I was 25 years old and I lost all that weight and became fairly fit. And like surfing is a real athletic activity, right?
Mhm.
And I was never a good surfer, but I
You're
became
competent?
yeah, like I could surf 3 to 6 foot waves easily on a regular basis, right? And do it, multiple days out of like 5 days out of 6 days out of the week. And so, and San Diego has some legit places, and I went to a few of those and did those pretty regularly. So, like, like for a guy who learned in his mid-20s, like I was fine. But to be a fine surfer is very, very fit by like regular standards. And
Yeah.
so all of my learning through this took place with a very, very, very fit body and and like the resiliency of youth, right? So
Mhm,
now here
yes.
I am, 46 years old, and and then my body's like,
Yeah, yeah.
so I had to go back through everything again, and it was the best thing that ever happened, because now I was able to like just make some tweaks to what I'm teaching, my people that I see in my practice, and the results have been absolutely amazing. And then it gave me a great insight into this the integration of the body. So I came up with a whole bunch of ways to describe it using Greek terms and ChatGPT
Mhm.
to translate, of course. So yeah, so it's like I love saying that the last time I was unlucky was when the kid pulled out in front of me. But everything that's happened since then has been like the greatest gift I could possibly have imagined.
Well, I'm glad you got hit by a car because you met me after that,
Yeah.
and I don't mean I I'm not glad you got hit by a car, Cotter,
I
but
am.
like it helped
I
me
think it was
out.
awesome. Well,
Because honestly, you were like, it was like, you're having so much fun when you're doing acupuncture. And here's another thing that I think makes Cotter different. And I know other acupuncturists might do this as well, but other people I've went to, they kind of leave you in a room and they go where they're working on 3 or 4 people at the same time. Cotter stays with you. He talks to you if you want someone to talk to. He shuts up if he senses you need him to shut up, or if he wants you to shut up. But he's paying attention to you and only you for the only hour. And the integration was sort of the result of this medicinal martial arts that you created, right? That's what you're teaching me, and that's what you put on your website and stuff.
Yep. And I thought it was cute because it's the same acronym as mixed martial arts.
Yes, I liked it too.
But,
yes, I agree.
yeah, right. It's funny, but I'd already. Oh, thank you. But I'd already started doing that. Then for years. But then it was only after I had the motorcycle crash that I was able to like kind of re-go through it again and then build myself up. Like I needed, like I was my own patient rather
You
than
needed
just
medicinal
like me.
martial arts.
Yeah, like I needed to. There's a lot of things I needed to improve on because up to that point it was just like let's get a little bit better, or let's do this in a different way, or I'm not feeling myself. Okay, now I'm myself again, right? Now it was like, oh, I am fucked up and I have to get better because I have a kid, I have patience, I have dreams, right? I'm not gonna like just not do this shit anymore. It's my favorite thing in the world. And to be honest, like I got very lucky, and it could have gone horribly. And there are people who had who have been ruined by it. I was not going to be. You can come back from 2 broken toes, and nuts eventually start to feel better. Not as fast as you might want, but that that gets better too.
I'm trying to think of like one of like or two any other thing besides Aikido that might have helped there. Like maybe breakdancing, maybe tumbling.
Tumbling would have helped. I think
Tumbling would have helped.
gymnast probably. Yeah. Interestingly, I've found that the people who can learn what I'm teaching in my medicinal martial arts, the ones who need the least amount of instruction and have the maximum retention, are all gymnasts. There's something, and I never would have put that together until I started doing this.
I think it's because they know how to like with their mind and brain like identify isometric like contractions very well and easily. That's just my guess, but I pulled up your medicinal martial arts thing. I'm not going to read this, but would you tell everybody like what the concept of the medicinal martial arts and how you're using it to help people, how you've used it to help me even?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I won't speak anything about you because I'm going to respect your privacy because I'm legally bound. Plus, I also like respecting people's privacy. But yeah, so Tai Chi, is called the Grand Ultimate Fist, right? And they teach it as a martial art. And then Qigong, there's a fantastic movie, if you like over the top ridiculous things, called Ricky-O, or The Story of Ricky.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember the old, when I'm going to date myself, I've already said that I'm 46, so I'm fucking ancient, but The Daily Show at one point in time was hosted by a guy named Craig Kilborn, who was before Jon Stewart, right?
Yeah,
and he had a section he called 5 Questions, and he would ask 5 questions of his guest. And before they did the 5 questions, they had this little video of a dude standing, one guy sitting there looking uncomfortable, and this big, huge guy just clapping the hands together and smushing the other guy's head like a Gallagher watermelon explosion.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that film of the guy, clapping the dude's head apart was from this movie called Story of Ricky. And it was a totally over the top martial arts, gore fest. But the martial art that Ricky practices is Qigong, which is really funny because it's like even Qigong is considered to be a martial art. And then there's this one dude who he's a Western guy who moved to China, and he wrote a couple books, I think. I read some of his, and he maintained that he did a lot of like pit fighting, and he maintained the only reason he could do the fighting he did is because he practiced Qigong for like 3 or 4 hours a day to keep his body capable of doing the fighting. Now, this dude, I think I remember his name correctly. Obviously, I'm not going to say it because he loved the smell of his own farts. I mean, it was one of these like.
So you don't want to smell it for him.
Well, I don't want him to come find me and make me smell his because, as I said, I'm not a great fighter. I'm a great doctor or healer, but I'm not a great fighter. I could probably more people that I care to make could probably make me smell their farts. But anyway, but there's this tradition of like using Tai Chi and Qigong to heal yourself, or to as a way of making things better. And my thought is that all martial arts will have some way of saying. The only opponent is within, right? And the way I think of it is that that's the only thing, that's the only fight that ever matters, and the only way that you can contend with the opponent that is you is not by defeating yourself; it's by healing yourself, right? So that's where the medicinal martial arts comes in, and so I want to lean into the medicinal aspect of Tai Chi and Qigong, and what I really encourage for people who are fighters is to learn this stuff because you do heal faster if you do it. The other thing it does is it teaches you integration and connection. So it is going to make you better at doing what you're already good at as far as fighting. And so it's and if you think you could do yin and yang here. So if boxing is a yang martial art, then Qigong is a lovely yin component to that, right? And where Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu really shines is that it is a yin practice that is optimized for yang aggression, which is really cool because it's like a lovely combination of the two.
Yes. But in fact, it's hard to be good at jiu-jitsu if you're all yang and no yin. Like you can't just like muscle anything with somebody who has superior technique.
Absolutely. Yeah. But even someone who's a BJJ, who's really good at BJJ, like they would also benefit from Qigong and Tai Chi because number one, people do. I mean, the years that I was doing it, like it was normal for people to talk about their injuries. So healing your injuries is important, but then it does give you more sensitivity. So it'll just make you better at
more sensitivity
doing that because it just makes you, it gives you more awareness. It helps you pay attention, like what your body's actually doing. And that's really so having a martial art. And then the other thing is that, you got to do these every day, take one day off. But if you say do it every day, people will usually, do it.
Take one day off. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's dedication to it, taking it seriously. So in that way, it's a martial art, there's a self-discipline. So, and there's there's another thing that they like to talk about. Martial artists, if you don't know any, are very opinionated and they love to go into this stuff. Yeah. But I know, but just for people listening. So one of the things I love to talk about is a hard style versus soft style. That's an argument they love to have. And I think that's the wrong way to look at it. You can look at it as, are you doing something to hurt somebody or are you doing something to heal yourself? And then so it's the mixed martial arts or the medicinal martial arts is really the only two places these are ultimately going to wind up. Because a lot of people, most of the people who are martial artists that I talk to, they've never been in a fight. They're not ever going to be in a fight.
Right.
They will talk to you for hours about how much it's improved their life. They're more confident. They're more self-controlled. Their kids are better. Their kids do better in school. They're more respectful. They feel better. They move better. Their golf game is better. And so, and there's that for most of us, that's what martial arts are for. So I thought with medicinal martial arts, okay, let's just make that the goal stated right up front. And then also recognize this is meant to be a complement and a component of not to replace another practice, but you should definitely have this there with whatever you're doing. Because, the last thing you're ever going to do is you're going to have to, if you're conscious, you're going to have to die. And you're either going to go out kicking and screaming, or you're going to go out peacefully.
Not me, Cotter. Not me. I am going to live forever. Yes. I've been planning this for a while now.
Upload the consciousness, put the brain into a robot body, whichever one it is.
Exactly. And I'll just keep going to the sauna and doing all my life hacking until that gets invented. Yeah. And I got to tell you, man, I'll rant more to you about this on Friday because it's been a weird process for me. And like we mentioned earlier, that it can sometimes make you have emotional reactions and weird energy stuff and things like that. And although you're not going to talk about it, I will say that like Cotter has literally had me in hysterics, like on his table, like laughing my ass off and crying at the same time. I said that on my podcast already, so it's all good. And the last 3 days, okay, and this is going on the show too. I'm not like out of pain 100%, but like my like body's moving around. I feel like I have a different body right now, and it's happening kind of. It's a bit of a slow drip, but it's like I've been asked Brittany because Brittany's had to deal with me just even the last couple of days. Have I not been a little much the last couple of days? Yeah. So, but I feel the energetic centers of my body like opening up again and stuff. And I know I'm just using woo-woo stuff, and I don't care because when you first met, you even told me, look, acupuncture's half woo, like, I just wanted to thank you, Cotter, for like, because like, I feel like it was sort of a good timing because I was not sold on acupuncture at all. And I just was going as sort of a last resort. I had tried everything and you're 5 minutes from me. So there's a lot of things like that have been happening in my life lately, serendipitously. One was related to my new job that I got coming. So I'm just trying to follow my nose, my man. And so, but as we're wrapping things up, there's a couple like quick questions that I had, like that I just burning questions. And I know this is probably complicated, but why are feet so important in acupuncture? And why do I hate when you stick needles in them so much? Because I want people who have a similar, like to me, like, because I really have to really calm myself down. And you're a part of that. You're calm my presence. But like, I don't like people touching my feet, All
right. So think back to when shoes were invented.
Mm-hmm.
And not just like moccasins or, like animal or woven stuff, around your feet, but like what if you and I say shoe, what we're thinking about, right?
Yeah.
And so
like 100 years ago, 200 years ago, maybe.
Right.
No, more. Yeah.
Well, probably less because if somebody has problems with their arch, what do? They stick a pad in there, right? An insert. Right. And you basically like the idea is you're just getting these really, really, really thick soles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And like, oh, you want to run here? Here's a shoe with like a, whatever.
And here, let's hold your arch up for you so you don't have to.
Right. So now humans are bipedal, and we sacrificed a lot in order to go bipedal. However, that gave us the use of our hands, which allowed our brain to continue to get even more dominant and get even bigger than it was. And so we only make contact with our feet. And you think about all of our weight is going down to two spots. And there's only two spots that are
small surface area. It's like less than 1% of the surface area of your body.
I don't know, but sure.
Yes, it is.
And then the other thing is that in order for like what I teach in my Qigong class is that like you have to actively, I have people go barefoot or wear socks. You have to actively make the arch of your feet, right? That's where orthotics and modern medicine thoughts on feet health and like body health really fails people, is they don't ever talk about like getting these foot arches back. Because they fall because you're just not using them. The muscles I have a term for it, but that's another time. But anyway, so imagine you're walking around a hunter-gatherer world, right? You have moccasins or bare feet.
You're interfacing with the world. Yeah,
the whole time, your feet never stop moving. They're the most active part of you other than your fucking heart. They're more active than your lungs. They're moving all the time. So one of the ways to think about acupuncture is that your body is its own control panel. So remember I said about like using this point here, if you have like a sinus headache, right? Or, frontal headache, your body is set up to fix itself. And what the stuff that I've learned over the years, like the reason it's so fucking old is because it actually works. And the idea is it's allowing your body to align in a way where it will then fix itself and keep itself at optimum, right? It's like letting all the engineers on the spaceship actually go to work and like fix the things that need to be fixed, right? And so if your feet are constantly moving, these areas on your body, they're going to make big systemic changes. They're going to be on the feet because those are always going, right? And so now there are other areas that are also very important that are on the legs, because the lower legs have to be engaged. Like your arches can't be made properly if your tibialis muscles aren't working. The tibialis muscles are the ones that just to the side of the shin bone and just one that's underneath the shin bone.
This is me. This is what we do.
This is everybody, right? This is everybody. And so, all right, so then there's that. Well, okay, well, then those won't work correctly if your quadriceps and your hamstrings aren't working correctly. Interestingly, there are not a ton of acupuncture points on the quads and the hamstrings. There are some, but they're not a lot. And there are some that work very, very well, but they're not the ones that everybody knows and everybody uses. It's not until you get back to the abdomen and the glutes that you start getting acupuncture points that are very frequent. Why? Because if your hips aren't aligned, then your thighs won't work, your lower legs won't work, your feet can't work. So the same thing with your abdomen and your back. If your back isn't aligned, right? One of the things I teach in Qigong is that you have to use your abdominal muscles to gently keep your ribs engaged with your pubic bone to allow your low back to stretch out, right? Because
that's something I'm learning every day. I'm practicing it all day long. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So it's like, so, you got to have the stomach, and there's tons of acupuncture points right along the rectus, right along the six pack muscle. There's some on the sides too. And there's in the ribs and the center of the chest. And there's, and then in the paraspinal muscles, right? If your spine is not in good alignment, then your hips won't work, your legs won't work, your lower legs won't work, feet can't work correctly. So along the paraspinal muscles on the back, there are ways to interface with every single system that Eastern medicine has, just along the paraspinals. And then the guy who made or popularized the Qigong that I really like, his name was Cotter, the 5 animals guy. The acupuncture points just next to the bumps, your spinous processes, they call those the Cotter family of acupuncture points because he was famous for popularizing those. The nerve roots, right? So he's a spinal guy. So when I learned his style, I was like, oh, I need to kind of re-engineer this as though spinal movements are the most important thing, no matter what the rest of me is doing. And I was like, oh yeah, it's the spinal guy. Of course, that's the way he's going to want it done. Anyway, it was like a message in a bottle from 2,000 years ago. That's why I love what I do, because it's super fun. Anyway, and the same thing, you get the neck, the head, and how the shoulder blades work. And so all these things are integrated correctly. Then the feet can actually hold yourself up the right way. And so the whole body plays together in this way. And then talking about the kinetic muscle chain for making the foot arches, that's just a metaphor for how everything needs to interface. But there are these contact points that are going to have more of these buttons to push on your control panel than other places because of the movement.
Well, I'm going to speak very ignorantly about this, but just from my own personal, but I've been these buttons have been turning on and turning off and stuff lately because of you. And so it's been fun so far. Yesterday, my personality felt different because the energy systems were moving around in my body. I felt excited for the day, and I just can't thank you enough. I really mean that. And so last question. If someone wants to get started, they hear this and they go, yeah, I'm in pain. And they live in Denver or somewhere, just not here. And they can't see you and come, because I know you're very dedicated and specific about, I do this with one person in my studio, but and because that's the best way to do it, which I love. If somebody just wants to get started in Qigong or Tai Chi, or whatever it is, with the intention of healing a chronic pain or a painful body, what do they do? Where is the first thing?
Oh God, I got very lucky that the guy that I learned Tai Chi from actually knew. Yeah, I know. So I got very, very fortunate because he actually like knew about all this stuff. And then I met people in San Diego who were students of the dude who wrote the first book in English about Tai
Mm-hmm.
Chi, and the students
Mm-hmm.
did not know how to do Tai Chi.
Mm-hmm.
And it's either because the guy didn't teach him or the guy himself didn't know how to do it. So what I am describing doesn't mean that that's what people are going to experience when they go to do this stuff.
Okay.
Um, Now, that being said, if you get lucky, great. If you don't, then I would say what I was talking about, the cognitive behavioral therapy with my therapist who loved the smell of his own flatulence. If you look at this, it's like, okay, this is how I'm going to make this work for me, no matter who it is I'm learning from. That's so with
Huh.
I will give people 2 sessions with me, and I'm like, okay, if you do these 2 things, these 2 sessions, you could probably go to any teacher you want and get tremendous benefit from whatever they show you, whether they know how to do all this crap or not, right? Whether they know how to actually do all these things or not. And so what I would say is just go find anything. If you're going to go online, don't, for God's sake, do not do it with the video. Watch the video, take notes if you like to take notes, watch it a couple times, then do your best to just do what you saw, because you have to evoke this inside of you if it's ever going to work for you. You do not get the
Yes.
benefit from the class. You learn what to do in the class. You get the benefit from actually doing it on your own. It's your own individual thing.
Yeah.
That's the first important thing. The second thing is that once the divorce is finished, then I got my taxes done. The divorce is almost done. Once that's done, I can finally get the videos that I've been making to do
Yeah.
for my thing, and I'll put it up on YouTube, be totally free. And then that will be like the essence behind all of this. And that's not as
Yes.
good as like being in the room with somebody, but from what I'm describing, like I'm going to do my very, very best to get, so like hopefully most people who try this will be able to get some indication from it. And then if
Mm-hmm.
they take that to, like a teacher, like a Qigong or a Tai Chi teacher, be like, hey, I was watching this goofy guy in Georgia. This is what he said. Does this make any sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Then that might be a way to sort of like shop around to see if people are going to be beneficial. Because if your Tai Chi teacher is not talking about your adductors and is not talking about how you hold your shoulder blades, then you do not need to study with them. That's the first thing right there. So really, this is a way of saying there's a lot. Remember, the martial arts in China are they go through lineages because families want to preserve an income stream for their children. So a lot of martial arts coming from Asia is meant to make money. So they're banking on you having a preconceived notion of what it is that you want to do, and then they're just going to take your money while they take you through what you are expecting to get. And if
I want
you
to kill someone with the death touch.
Right, precisely. And if the teacher you're with is ever going to tell you you're doing it correctly or your idea of it is correct, that person just wants your money. They're not being honest with you, or they don't know what they're doing.
Because it's a
Because
mastery thing, you're never doing it correctly.
you will never do it correctly. I have a whole system that I put together that I sell, for God's sake, and I believe in it. I don't think that I'm a charlatan, but I know I've never done it right, and I know I'm never going to do it right.
So the charlatan says, "Oh, I'm the master, and I got all the answers."
If you are taking it from a guy who has my complexion and general facial features, but is wearing a Qing Dynasty suit, you're probably not helping yourself. You're definitely helping that guy make a car payment or a condo payment.
Yeah, and so the essence of your answer is rapport and like finding the right person and not getting, and if not getting discouraged by necessarily that individual practitioner, getting what you can out of it, and then practicing it. And that's an interesting way to put that, because myself included, people often get introduced to something. People go, their doctor says, maybe you should do a little bit of yoga for your
Right.
stress or something. And they go to one yoga class, some bitch in there they said something rude to them or something, or the person that they didn't vibe with the instructor. Yoga sucks, or they do it once or twice or whatever,
Right.
and it's yoga's fault, right? But we talked about this with mental health. I think it's the same thing with that. It's literally the same thing with that. It's why you and I really, if we didn't vibe, then I don't think you would have been able to, heal me. Right. And
You would never come back.
yes, exactly.
I could make you feel better no matter what your thought is, as long as you come back.
But
the second or third time.
People will do this thing though, where they will go, I'm going to acupuncture, and then they'll do it 15 or 20 times, and maybe they don't trust their practitioner, but they're just like, I'm doing the thing, I'm doing the acupuncture thing, so it's making me feel better. I personally believe that healing relationship is like the rapport and trust is like for me anyways, like a huge part of it.
Totally. Well, the bedside manner, right? They have a term for it for a reason. And there is a mechanism behind the placebo effect. And if somebody has a lot of faith and a lot of love in their thought of their treatment, it will work better. It just will. Right? People have been able to heal their meniscus thinking they had a surgery to help to take the meniscus out, when really the meniscus isn't supposed to heal, and the meniscus will, so amazing things will happen with a good attitude. But with acupuncture, even if you think, a lot of people who come to see me realize I'm a conceited asshole who loves the sound of his own voice, but they're going to get better anyway, because acupuncture is actually doing something. Now, there are definitely people who are acupuncturists who are doing the same thing the white dude in the Qing Dynasty suit is doing. They're like, I'm going to fit the part, whatever part that happens to be. They're not really very good at it, because it's an art form. It's not a science. It's not like a mechanics, right? Like, if your mechanic is good, you can tell, because all the parts for the car are identical. They were all made in a factory. And if your mechanic can get that part onto there, they can do it, because it's right there in front of you. It's a very technical thing, right? Yeah, there might be some artistry to mechanics, but not the same way there would be with like painting, okay? Acupuncture, there is some biology in, like, yes, we know there are spots that are going to have more of an influence on the nervous system than other spots. And it's a nervous system medicine. It's very, very short, right? And so if I know where these spots are and I put the needle in there, then yes, I should be able to evoke the changes, right? But the way you put the needle in and what you choose to pair those spots with, that's where the artistry comes in. So there are lots of acupuncturists who they just know the basic thing, and they'll do the same basic thing for everybody, and it's what they were shown, and some people doesn't work. And I never accepted it doesn't work. If it's going to work, it's going to work on everybody, or I haven't diagnosed it correctly, and that's why it's not working. So like, not every acupuncturist is good, because it's an art, and it's very, very difficult to tell. I would say just go, and if you're feeling better, the shit's working. And if you go a bunch of times and it's either the person's too busy to properly diagnose you, or they don't know what they're doing. And it's like, like, there are plenty of bad doctors. It's really funny, because when lots of people tell me about their doctors, and every person's doctor, you would be surprised to learn, is the best doctor in that field. And I've worked in 3 parts of the country, and every single doctor is always the best. It's like
not for me, but most people, yeah. But I have a completely different view of doctors in general that I won't get into.
Don't like any of them.
Well, it's not that I don't like them. I learned, because of all these injuries and things like that doctors are fallible and put on their pants just like you and I do. And it's not the doctor's fault. What it is the perception that he's a doctor, so he must know what he's talking about.
That's exactly,
because a doctor is a human being, and human beings are wrong all the time.
That's just the point I'm making, right? It's like, on one hand, everyone says their doctor's the greatest, and then others, this doctor couldn't help, right? But it's not that. Well, some people do say medicine doesn't work, but that's a different conversation. So but acupuncture is just like with biomedicine. It's like, there's some doctors who are very, very good, and others who absolutely suck, and the fact that they still are employed is astonishing. And it's the same way with acupuncture, chiropractor. Like, I was just talking to my neighbor who's a massage therapist earlier this morning. Like, there's some massage therapists who don't keep their fingernails trimmed, and then they'll scratch their clients. And it's like, Why would you even do, like, how would you even do that, right? That's just
I'd
like,
be so mad.
so,
Brittany's face.
oh
Look
yeah,
at her face.
yeah, I know. It's just like that is just like, you fail as a human being not to recognize that. But there are people who do that, who are licensed and they have a job and they're not very good at it. So it's the same thing with Tai Chi. It's the same thing with yoga. And so, to talk about the stuff as a journey is it makes a lot of sense. And if you get back to that, who was it? It wasn't Clifford Geertz. It was the Joseph Campbell, right? The hero's journey, the hero's thousand faces. Like, there's always that point when the protagonist, meets the wise person who initiates them into that knowledge that then becomes the basis of their ability to go through on their big journey. It's like you have to keep looking for the person who's going to like make that click. And it might be that the person listening to this doesn't live in a place where there is a Qigong or a Tai Chi person who knows what the hell they're talking about, but maybe the yoga teacher is really, really good. Or maybe it's the boxing teacher is really, really good. And that's how you're going to get to this, right? And then, like, I spent a lot of time nerding out over Tai Chi, but I've done a lot of yoga. I've never studied with a teacher in yoga the same way that I have with Tai Chi and Qigong, but I really learned about the body through acupuncture and Tai Chi to the point where, part of my medicinal martial arts, there are a couple things I got from yoga in there that I tweaked because I don't know anyone who shows them the way that I do them. But that, where the benefit comes from. So I was able to really understand yoga a lot more than I would have based on the time I've spent with actual teachers because of my Tai Chi practice. So if all we want to do here is integrate the body so we can free the mind and then open up to the spirit, really, like, any person who's going to be mindful in a body art is going, and that person's legit, and you connect with them. So you can get that teacher student relationship. Like, that is what you would do. It's not necessarily Tai Chi. I just happened to find Tai Chi and have it fit with everything else in my life. I got super lucky. But it might be a different thing for somebody else. And, one of my favorite ideas is that there's many routes to the top of Mount Fuji. Like, it might be that, for some people, it's like, yeah, they do learn legit yoga. And then that's how, and then, so I would say it's just like, it's about using the bodies, but understanding. And that's why I want to get these videos made. And I have some stuff written down, but it's not very well done at this point. But just understand what you're trying to do, so you know what you're looking for, because you might find it in a place you're not expecting.
Yeah, I'm excited for the videos too because they help me with the verbal cues. But yeah, Cotter, Kelsey, Kelsey Healing Arts, North Georgia, USA. Thank you so much, man, for joining the Multiverse. I want to bring you back maybe with your friend to talk D&D, and we lost you again. Hold on. Maybe you guys come on together, but there was other things I wanted to talk to you about that we just didn't get to. We did 2 hours, so that's pretty good. Maybe we could talk about some herbal medicine and stuff another time too. But it's an honor and a pleasure, and I'm going to link the website in the description. And thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Cool.